One guy's seen it, the other guy hasn't. First guy's gonna tell the second guy all about it while they both get drunk. All right, welcome to another very special episode of One Guy's Seen It, the only podcast where one guy has seen the movie or television show, in this week's case, and the other guy hasn't. So, initially in the first episode, before the first episode, I told the other guy a little bit about it and convinced him to watch it, and now we get drunk and then we watch it and then we talk about it until the show is done. Yeah. And this series is all about season 1 of True Detective. Ooh. And man, it is really getting rolling here. How you doing, Sum? Give me the skinny.
I'm doing good. Yeah, that was like I was just saying to you. It's like that's some uplifting television right there. Those last two episodes.
It's like I said. You know, you were talking about the differences between this show and Twin Peaks last week, and it's like, man. Yeah. Like I told you, dude, after every episode of True Detective, I just feel like absolute dog shit. That doesn't mean it's not an incredible show, but goddamn.
Yeah, it's it leaves you feeling dirty, like you need a shower, but you're like, it's cleansing, you know? It's a cleansing experience.
Like you need a martini extra dirty.
A dirty martini.
Extra dirty.
Extra dirty.
I mean, that was shameless right there in the bar by Maggie.
Yeah, I mean, which I thought was funny because like there's no way she could have known what that girl ordered. It was just like a random coincidence, maybe.
Wait, what girl ordered?
The girl from like the T-Mobile store that comes over and it's like dirty martini, like when she goes to the bar.
Oh, did she also say that? I didn't even catch that. No way.
I got an eye for this shit, my friend.
Damn.
Picking up on what they're putting down. And
that's some cheesy bullshit right there.
Yeah. And it's but these last 2 episodes are great, and they're really well, I guess we should just get into 5, which kind of just picks up right where 4 left off.
Well, look, before we get started, I got 6 words for you.
Okay.
Time is a flat circle, man.
I wrote that down too.
So I know you're just kind of getting into True Detective, and I warned you not to watch any of the other seasons, but "Time is a flat circle" was such a popular quote from this first season.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like the fan base really like latched on to this quote. And, you know, people say it ironically all the time when talking about True Detective. And so the future showrunners and directors always try to weave it into the future seasons, and it always just comes out so fucking cringy.
Yeah.
Like, they'll just throw it out mid-conversation. You're like, there it is. Time's a flat circle.
You remember when the show used to be great?
Yeah, that's literally what it is. It's like they try to use stuff from the first season that fans really loved as a crutch to make people feel like they're still in the True Detective universe, but it's just not.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too because the guy Reggie Ledoux, he says like time is a flat circle, and he's like, and McConaughey's like, what is that, Nietzsche or some shit? Shut the fuck up, dude.
Like, he's like, shut the fuck up, Nietzsche. Yeah, but okay, sorry, I keep getting ahead of myself. I just had to kick things off with because I literally like this is what happens when I watch this show. I really want to take notes, but I end up just writing one thing. And so my entire note is time is a flat circle. So that's all I got.
I did think it was cool when he was talking about the 4-dimensional universe, like being on like a flat surface. And like,
yeah, man.
He's like, what if we could experience time non-linearly? And it was interesting because I'd gotten into reading Kurt Vonnegut's stuff, which I think I mentioned in the last one.
Yeah. You nerd.
Yeah. But one of his books, Slaughterhouse-5, which you should totally read because it's about World War II, and Kurt Vonnegut was, in the war in the last, I think, year or so, and he ended up getting taken prisoner in Germany, and he was there during the firebombing of Dresden. He was
fuck.
And they, him and the prisoners that were there were taken underground in a slaughterhouse, and that's how they survived the bombing. They were inside a slaughterhouse.
Holy shit. Really?
Yeah, and then, as part of, just being a POW, they had to clean up the bodies and the rubble in the city after the firebombing. So he's been through some crazy shit.
Yeah, I don't know how you come back after that.
Yeah, but the interesting thing about the book, though, is, it kind of blends, this reality of his experiences in the war and sci-fi elements. There's these he gets the lead character in the book, Billy Pilgrim is his name, gets abducted by these aliens called the Tralfamadorians, and the way that they experience time is not linearly. They experience it on a flat plane of existence, just jumping around, and that's the way the book is structured.
Just like the aliens in Arrival.
Yeah, but the way the book is structured, it just jumps around in time, kind of randomly, all over the place. He'd be on his deathbed, or it'd be way after, just stuff like that. But I did think that philosophical viewpoint was an interesting little thing. I don't know if it's related to that, but it's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, hanging out in the fourth dimension, looking down at time as a flat circle.
Yeah, just a flat circle.
You get another incredible line. Well, there were a couple of reasons why I loved that part of the episode so much. Is I kind of forgot. You remember, in the last one, I was talking about how shocking it is to me that the two detectives that are interviewing Cole are never dude, shut the fuck up. Yeah. Well, it finally happens in this episode.
Yeah, they finally snap, and they're like, dude, the fuck.
Dude, shut. Yeah, and it's after that whole the whole time is a flat circle spiel where he's got the death created time to grow the things that it would kill. That's some hardcore shit, man.
Yeah, I love that.
Created time to grow the things that it would kill.
Yeah,
that's about the darkest thing anyone could ever possibly say.
Dude, yeah, I was thinking about that too, and then he has this whole thing. It's after that where he's you're reborn into the same time over and over again. So he's there's no telling how many times we've sat in this room and had this exact same conversation. And I was just
you're trapped.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, I'm this would be the worst thing to watch when you're high on weed or mushrooms or something.
Dude,
like that.
No shit.
Because I was dead sober
no
when
thanks.
I was watching it, and I was oh shit, jeez, I was getting all fucked up.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but anyway, I'm sorry, I keep getting ahead. So how does this episode kick off? What are we dealing with?
So he the biker guy that he had nabbed after the raid on that house, which I can't remember the guy's name, probably not that important, but one of his old biker
Ginger
dudes. Ginger, yeah, that's right. They meet with the one of the supplier dudes. It's a partner to Reggie at the bar, and he gives him that whole spiel about we'll do coke for meth, and he's he can smell it from a mile away. He's fuck this, I don't trust you, and he just gets the fuck out of there.
Yeah, you got no soul behind those eyes, man. He sees right through them.
There's acid on your on the edges of your eyes.
It's corrosive. Your soul is corroding.
And
I love that the whole show, that's the only guy that ever really gets to him.
Yeah, it really it really bothers him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing too. It's all those even little tiny scenes that don't necessarily go anywhere are just written really well. And just everything feels so natural. Even I think there's a scene in episode 6 where he's talking to the preacher guy, and their whole conversation is written really realistically. I thought it came off very natural.
Yeah.
So it's
you keep saying natural. It's interesting. I noticed in this first episode, for the first time really, the insane usage of natural light throughout this show. There's very rarely any artificial light. It's always, even in places where it just doesn't make any sense. Later on in the episode when Marty goes to that bar and runs into the girl from the cat house or whatever. I noticed that all the lights are off in the bar. like in the middle of the day. It's really nuts. And then I started paying attention to it. I was like, holy fuck, like there's almost no artificial light anywhere in the show, which I think does a lot to add to that kind of natural feel of everything. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, it's like all like practical lighting stuff that would be there, and then like if there's any like artifice, it's like just a 1-point lighting thing. Like it's just there to like illuminate their face a little bit. Like the pretty much about it.
Yeah, keeping it simple.
Yeah, and I think that really adds to like that element. Like the performances and the dialogue feel really natural, but like the lighting too. Like it really grounds everything, and like this like it's a believable enough world where you're like, oh, you get totally sucked into it, and you're just kind of mesmerized by it a little bit, to use one of those buzzwords. But
Buzzy.
But I think it's really true. I just like, you just get sucked in and you just become like, because it's not really like, that's the thing too. It's like a lot of the characters you don't even really necessarily like that much, but you're just so fascinated by what they're going to do next, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the magic.
Yeah, just great. Love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it gets kicked off with that, and then they track down where Reggie is, and and then all that happened so quickly. I was like, I didn't expect that. Where they go raiding the meth lab that they have.
Yeah, dude, fucking craziness.
And and then they're like telling the story to the cops, and like they've got their story like locked down pretty well. Because they're basically telling the exact same story about like how they were like fired upon, but then we like see it happen as they're talking about it, and they just casually walk in with no resistance whatsoever.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah, they're talking about like the trees were blown apart, man. There's like nom.
Yeah, yeah, which is funny too, because it's like just a subtle little thing about their backstory. Because I think both their dads were in Vietnam. Like they have like they talk about that every now and then, like.
Yeah. Cole's dad for sure. And then I liked learning. Yeah, we didn't talk about that last time. Where you kind of learn about his dad sort of being in the war and then taking him to Alaska and living out in the fucking wilderness.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry. Yeah, crazy fucking scene.
Yeah, and it was just really cool the way it was presented, and so they pretty much just take these guys with no real effort. Like it was pretty easy, but they like shouldn't have been there in the first place, kind of thing. And they definitely didn't have a warrant or anything like that. So it's the only way it would probably hold up, or they wouldn't get reprimanded in some way. But yeah, then it gets revealed when Marty goes looking around. He finds these two kids in the back somewhere. It's like implied that there was assault and rape potentially, or
Yeah, they were being kept in the back of a truck.
Yeah.
Pretty hardcore.
Yeah, and then the one little boy is like already dead. Like he'd been dead for like a day or two. And the little girl was still alive and like catatonic. And then Marty just comes out and shoots Reggie in the face, like point blank.
Dude, with what looked like, I was trying to figure it out. It's like might be like a 380 revolver, but like very large caliber bullet. Just fucking blows his head off.
Yeah, it just completely blows his face off. It was awesome.
Hardcore, man.
Yeah, but in the moment you don't know what he had seen, so I was like, "What the fuck are you doing, you crazy bastard?"
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? They spent like 3 or 4 episodes now looking for Reggie Ledoux, and they finally find him, and you get 3 lines out of him before Marty fucking blows his head off.
Yeah, and I think he's definitely like an integral part to the overall plot, but I think it's pretty clear, like the way that goes down, that he's not really the main guy. Like there's some other stuff going on besides, just this crazy methed out dude, in this lab in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
So, yeah. Oh, and then the guy, the partner guy comes out and he like tries to run, and then he gets blown up by his own trap, which was awesome. It just
fucking epic. What a way to go out.
Just gets
obliterated.
Yeah, completely obliterated. It was and it was very Nam-esque too. With like, because you've read those stories about like the Vietnamese, like the way that they planted traps that are pretty, pretty barbaric. I mean, like some of the stuff that they would do, because they had like those tripwires, and then the bombs would go off, or like
the spike pits.
Yeah, the spike pits, which was like it was like a false floor on the ground, and when you would like hit the the plank of wood, there were spikes in it, so you would fall down onto spikes with the bottom of your foot, but the pieces would go in at an angle, and then they would clamp down on your foot like a bear trap also, so you were just totally like your leg is fucked. I think it's really effective, but I mean like it, anyway, minor detail.
Like you said, barbaric.
Yeah, but I mean that was just what they had. That was the only way they could really fight back.
Yeah,
they were just getting slaughtered. Because I think it was like we had lost 55,000 guys, which is a ton of dudes, but the North Vietnamese like lost 1 million or something like that, some astronomical number.
I think so much of that too was the bombing, like the Ho Chi Minh Trail bombing. It was something like, I think what was it? There were like 5 times as much explosives used just on the Ho Chi Minh Trail as all of the ordnance expended in all of World War II, or some crazy stat. I forget what it is.
Yeah, and the bombing of Cambodia, which is really controversial. I think that was a Nixon thing.
Oh yeah, dude, that reminds me. Without getting too much into it, there's a new Netflix series you need to watch called The Octopus Murders. Have you heard anything about that conspiracy?
No, I haven't heard that.
Dude, if you're all into like Nixon, like the '60s madness kind of weird shit going on, dude,
I'm fascinated with all that.
Watch The Octopus Murders. It's all about this investigative reporter in the '90s who ended up dead in a hotel room of an apparent suicide that was quite obviously not a suicide, right as he was kind of
like an really Epstein kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, not quite, but it was a kind of thing where like he was found in a tub with wrists slit in a ridiculous way that no one would ever slit their wrists if they were killing themselves.
Right.
Like his wrists were cut so bad that the tendons weren't there anymore. Like you can't cut your other hand if your hand doesn't work anymore, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, long story short, you need to watch it because it's a pretty fucking wild conspiracy that he ended up kind of getting really close to. Just was sort of the conspiracy in short is that there were 8 people kind of at the top of everything, including George Bush and high-ranking officials in the CIA and the NSA that were all sort of pulling these strings on this massive web of like government or like secretly funded weapons campaigns, like the origins of the Iran-Contra stuff, basically using drug money. Yeah, basically just like using illegal drug money to fund illegal weapons manufacturing to give to... Anyway, just a lot of shit that we kind of know a lot of seeds of it are true now, or at least people in general assume that a lot of it's true now, but like when this guy was discovering it, it was... And still to this day, I don't think anybody really... Anyway, you need to watch it. It's awesome. Getting completely sidetracked.
No, you're good. Oh, it's... with the Nixon thing, too, just... I think he was like the first guy that it really like became clear that like the the president might actually do some shady shit from time to time. And
yeah, man.
But it's interesting you say that because I think Clinton had a similar like scandal, the Whitewater scandal, where like a bunch of people ended up dying in very mysterious ways, and none of it could ever be proven, but there was like definitely there's something fishy going on there, and a lot of the dudes like came forward. It's like like saying that they're gonna get murdered by the government because they know too much about what was going on.
There's all kinds of shit. See, this is the problem with these government systems, right? It's like if the CIA and the NSA were contrived to be these like independent bodies, right, that don't have to adhere to any laws or answer to anybody, so that they can get things that need to get done in secret. It's like where you end up having problems is when they're doing things in secret and the FBI starts trying to solve cases that they have something to do with, but they won't communicate with the FBI because they can't. And so you end up just getting just convoluted messes of shit that never gets solved. And I guess that's just a symptom of what past presidents believed our country needed to stop the Russians. Yeah. And it's just like It's man, I feel bad for all of the people who have died in this country over the last 50 years who just got caught up in some secret government bullshit.
Yeah.
It's fucked up, man.
So it is the last thing, but there's a thing I watched recently, and I'd have to go back and watch it again to get the details of it, but there was something with Kennedy where one of his general guys, like it was during like Cuban Missile Crisis, and like basically it was this whole thing about overthrowing Castro and like bombing Cuba because the nuclear missiles were like brought into Cuba. He's like, let's just bomb the whole country and like, but like let's try to make it look like, you know, that it wasn't us necessarily, like this whole covert operation that Kennedy rejected because he's like, that's insane. I think that's going to fail.
I remember hearing something about this.
Yeah, and I think there was something else too that was like on U.S. soil. Like it was like a crazy thing, but it had been like a rejected plan by somebody in the CIA at the time. And like, you know, I can't remember the details. I wish I could, but it was like, yeah, this crazy thing that Kennedy just like threw aside. And then like, and I think the thing about him getting assassinated too has made it become like, you know, like, oh, there's like some secret like society in the government that's like controlling everything, and like, you know, they had Kennedy killed and like, you know, all this stuff, which is interesting because I mean like it's kind of archaic what we're talking about, but it kind of, there's an element of conspiracy like in the through line of True Detective right now. There's like all this seedy underground stuff with the church and in Louisiana with the underprivileged kid school that like got burned down and all that stuff about like child trafficking and all that stuff. Which I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm trying to bring it back to something that's relevant.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. That's the whole reason we started talking about all this shit, is because it's a direct parallel to what's going on in our show that we're watching.
We plan this all out in advance, you know. We have these big scripts. Everything we've said is exactly what's written on the page. That's how we do the show.
We even script in all of the stutters and stumbles, just for authenticity's sake.
Yeah, I have long pause at the end of this sentence.
Right.
And then I continue.
Cough. Cough to the left of the microphone.
The book the Mother Night book, like that was like when he was like doing his Nazi campaign things, like as an undercover agent for the OSS, there would be lines in his speeches where he'd cough, and that was supposed to mean something to some like double agent on the inside.
Secret code.
Yeah, so he'd go, and then he'd be like, and like the way he like cleared his throat, or that was supposed to tell people something that were able to decode it somehow. And he never knew what it. Yeah, and he never knew what it was. He was just like, I helped somebody, I guess, you know, with this information. But yeah, interesting. Interesting.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry, back to the show.
Yeah, so where were we at? So they raid the meth lab. They kill the two dudes.
Yeah,
and then you sort of get all these kind of. It's like jumping through time a little bit, right? You almost start to get caught up to present day. You get this like 7-year period afterwards where, you know, Marty is considered a hero in the line of duty, and Cole gets a bravery commendation, and everything's hunky-dory. The kids grow up. Maggie's finally successful hooking him up with some nerdy doctor chick.
Yeah, which you get like very little about her. They like they hang out for a bit, and he was like, yeah, it was good, I guess. And they're like hanging out. You don't even really know why it ended between them. It was just kind of one of those things. It was probably just Rust being Rust, and they didn't really, it just kind of faded over time.
Yeah, not important.
Yeah. But and then the police with their whole investigation, it like you get the vibe that like they don't really care that much. They're kind of like glad those two fuckers are dead, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they ended up saving the little girl, who's like catatonic, because she becomes kind of important later on. With with the stuff.
With the stuff that's coming.
With the stuff and the things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's so yeah, you jump ahead 7 years, and which is really kind of a cool thing, which is something I really didn't expect, like the whole, like them being back in 95 to get wrapped up, and now we're kind of like in a middle period at the moment. And you see Marty's daughters grow up, like the one like rebellious teen, which I really got to give the show credit for, because I saw her like get out of the car with like the dudes and like the beer cans fall out. I was like, oh no, she's gonna just be screaming at him, like, you know, typical rebellious teenager kind of thing. And they really don't write her that way at all. Like, he's like trying to understand her. He's like, Dad, it's, you know, you don't understand. But she doesn't, like, you know, they don't fall into the cliches of like rebellious daughter, like fuck you, Dad kind of things.
Right.
It's written really realistically, which I appreciated.
No, yeah, agreed. It's not an easy thing to do without it being cheesy, especially for that time period, like early 2000s emo teenage girl, like Avril Lavigne vibes.
Yeah.
Easy to cheese that up.
Yeah, and I like the way that they do Marty. He's just like so out of touch with everything. He's just like, you got your makeup and your hair, like, I just don't understand. Make me understand. He's like, it's not for you to understand. It's just like,
what does he call her when he busts her, right? He busts her in a car with two older boys.
That's right,
doing the
yeah.
dirty, and I forget what he calls her when he's scolding her at home. He's like,
oh yeah,
he's like, what are you, the captain of the varsity slut squad? Or I forget what he says. It's like, God damn it.
Said something so fucked up to her, and like that's the only time where she really blows up at him, because he like said something fucked up, and she's like, fuck you, Dad, and then he like slaps her in the face. Like, he's being such a prick about everything. Like, he's not really that concerned about her safety. He's more concerned about her being a slut, which, you know, is not really like it. The kids being slightly older, it's like, you know, it's kind of weird, but I mean, like, is definitely didn't come off as seedy or bad. But I mean, like, that's
right.
kind of
and a girl
area.
is not a slut if they're fucking Marty, you know.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Any other girl that's fucking anyone is a slut.
As long as they're only fucking him, he's
yeah,
fine with it. Oh God. And I was gets his. Oh, I was so pissed at him too. I was just like, but I mean, like, that's kind of what I come to expect from Marty at this point. I'm like,
right.
You know, don't really have any high expectations of him, like, you know, ended up being a good guy. But I mean, jumping ahead, not to get too ahead, but I mean, like, at the end of 6, we're kind of like caught up to present time. So there's like a chance of a redemption arc for him, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see.
I won't hold my breath on that.
Yeah, we'll see. But, yeah, so, I mean, that's kind of where we're at, right? And the detectives clearly, at this point, you sort of find out, you get some clarity as to why they're interviewing Marty and Cole in the first place. And it's because they have a theory in the current day that Cole is actually behind a lot of these murders. Because he... Yeah. You know, after a falling out, it sucks too, because this is the rough thing about reviewing this show right after you watch the episodes, is because of all the timeline shifting. It's like things blend together, and I can't remember what happened in episode 5 versus episode 6.
Yeah,
but
it gets a little complicated to remember where
just
things were.
A little convoluted, but
it was pretty much like watching a whole movie, like when we do 2 back to back, and especially with me being fresh, it's like a lot of information to gather, so it's like almost like watching one long movie and like trying to piece together when that happened chronologically.
Right. Yeah, but you get the info that you know, the detectives in the current day are sort of after Cole for everything, and then you sort of find out why a little bit, that 7 years earlier, you know, after you know, things kind of start to hit the fan a little bit for both of them around the same time, when Cole, you know, gets kind of a tip from a dude. He's you know, he becomes known as this master interrogator, and he's just doing kind of a routine,
which is great,
interrogation.
They write those scenes really well, because it comes off very convincing.
The way he's able, and it's all McConaughey too, man. He's just fucking awesome.
But he's like able to psychologically break them down by not really doing a whole lot, just like hitting on little subtle psychological things to kind of like eat away at their, and he's able to kind of lull them into a false sense of security with him, and he can get them to just like, because they're like on the verge of tears like at the end of every interview, and he can just like get them to confess, which is so satisfying because I think in most police procedural kind of things, like that rarely ever happens, but the fact that he's so successful is so like entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it's bullshit. They're only showing the successful cases. I mean, they don't show how many people were like, hey, I'm not saying shit without a lawyer. Anybody with half a brain cell or a working frontal cortex would never, they'd be like, I need a fucking lawyer.
Yeah, but it's cool, like the way he's like presented as like, the killer, like that's the guy you call to get a confession, and he'll get one for you, like no matter what.
It's a pretty cool little part of his character, but
oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
The double murder guy that he talks to. Yeah. Basically like interviewing about him something random, and then the guy is like, he's like on the precipice of confessing, and he Cole's like, okay, I got you. Like you basically admitted to this murder. Like you're fuck. He's like, whoa, wait, he's like, that guy that you got the kill that's not the guy. Like you got the wrong guy. And then he drops the little piece of information and calls him the Yellow King.
The Yellow King.
And that was like the piece of the puzzle. And he's like, oh, okay, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about. And he kind of ruins the whole thing because he like lashes out at the guy and like throws him up against the wall and kind of throws out his whole testimony a little bit. Yeah,
he loses it, and then we get the guy. Go ahead.
But the Yellow King, I was trying to remember because it must have been mentioned a couple of times before. And,
so the first time it gets mentioned is in Dora Lang's diary, the first girl who's found dead. When they find her diary at the cat house. Yeah. And I think that's the first time it gets mentioned, and then I believe that her ex-husband mentioned the Yellow King too.
Charlie Lang.
Yeah, Charlie.
And I guess they just assumed it was Reggie because like all the pieces seem to fit in that box, and they just kind of assumed that he must have been that guy because it was kind of like a vague description.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really go clear because you'd think with the mind that Cole has, that he sort of, it's like after finding these two dudes and killing them and them dying in the way that it happened, you would think there was a part of him that thought that there had to still be more to it. Yeah. And it seems like that part of him wasn't more powerful than the part of him that just wanted to feel like it was done and move on. Yeah. And well, that doesn't last very long.
Yeah, because he kind of goes into like a sense of normalcy with that girl, and like he kind of lives a normal life for a little bit. And I think even like if he didn't actually catch the guy, he caught two guys that were bad enough that it was at the end of it was good enough kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I think lighting that fire underneath him is like actually, there's you didn't get it all, like really kind of sends him on this like obsessive spiral in the next episode.
Yeah, and he ends up kind of getting, and I kind of want to stay in this middle timeline regardless of where it happens, just to keep shit straight. But he ends up, he ends up finding out through interviewing the Reverend, right, from earlier in the season. Does that happen in this first episode?
No, I think it happens in the next. I think it's one of the first scenes in the next episode.
Okay.
But I think the last thing that happens in that episode is the double murder guy that does the Yellow King thing. He ends up getting mysteriously commits suicide in his jail cell.
Ah, yes.
And he slits his wrist, like what you were talking about. The guy that slits his wrist.
Uh-huh.
And
but in this particular situation, it seems like it wasn't somebody else, definitely somebody else involved, but it was that phone call from a mysterious payphone.
Yeah, but it's obscured enough to where there's, it's probably pretty unlikely, but it's mysterious enough that you're like, okay, like, you don't exactly know what happened in that room, and they kind of left him alone for like over half an hour or something like that. Kind of fishy.
Yeah. See, I didn't get that from it, because when they show the scene, you can see how he cut his wrists. Like there was like the rusty edge of the bunk, so it was clear like where he did it and how he did it. And I don't think, because they showed the footage, nobody comes in or out during that time period. So I think it was just somebody called him on the phone and was like, "You need to, if you don't fucking end your life, like we're gonna do it," kind of a thing. Yeah,
very Epstein kind of moment.
Yeah, but again, how would you bring up a good point, like how it almost seems like there had to, one of those other police officers kind of had to somehow be a little bit involved, because I assume, how would anyone know that he had said anything about the Yellow King?
Yeah, and he was like, somebody was tipped off. Like there's a rat in the the police department, like departed kind of moment. There's a rat in this office.
Honestly, I don't remember. I don't remember if that even gets touched on again, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it's probably
an interesting little point.
Yeah, it's but it's shrouded in enough mystery where it's, like there's definitely something up there, and there's something going on beneath the surface, but you're led to believe that it's like this phone call that he had from this mysterious payphone in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
and it doesn't really explain why he ends up going back to one of the abandoned Tuttle schools, one of these religious schools. He kind of just, I think he just has a hunch that there's still some answers there, and he ends up finding, one of those weird little wooden sculpture things in there. And I think that's how that episode ends, which leads him to hunt down good old Reverend, what's his face, from Boardwalk Empire.
What's his name in the show? It's Sheriff Eli from...
Eli Thompson.
Eli Thompson.
Elias.
And this is one of the best things I've seen that guy in, too. Like,
yeah, he's great.
He plays it so... Because I think in Boardwalk Empire, he tends to play things really over the top. And, just being like this kind of like chaotic figure that nobody can really reel in. But in this show, he's so subdued and... just like beaten down by the world. Like, his really good performance, like that scene at the beginning of 6 when he comes to interview him and he's like kind of drinking himself to death pretty much.
Yeah.
And I did think it was funny. I did think it was funny too. I was like, there must be, every time they interview somebody, like they're either drinking or smoking a cigarette in every single interview.
Yeah, man, you gotta set the vibe somehow.
Yeah. And it sets the atmosphere too, because like everywhere that they go, because he even interviews the little kid's dad, the one that died. In the truck. What was his name? Gertie or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, some like longshore fisherman dude, and he's just chain smoking cigarettes. And doesn't really give him a whole lot of information, but it gets peppered in throughout this episode. Like he's going back and trying to piece something together, like interviewing all these people,
sticking his nose in old stuff.
Yeah, which is so fucking good. And then,
man.
So Rust pretty much walks out of the interview pretty close to the beginning of this episode, I think. Which has been like the kind of whole narrative, like focal point about like these interviews that Marty and Rust are having simultaneously, and they're like doing them kind of side by side as they tell the story. And this is the first time you get a break from that, and he's like, fuck this, I'm out of here. And like it's your first sense of like, okay, we're kind of easing back into present day now.
Yeah, we're getting caught up just a little bit.
Yeah. And then they start interviewing Maggie in this episode, and she's brought in for a question.
And
you wonder why. And so it gets answered pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Which I always had a sneaking suspicion that was going to happen at some point.
Yeah, and that's kind of why. So, and that's I sort of want to stay in this middle timeline, right? To make sure don't miss anything, right? So chronologically, I guess what what happens is he goes back to the school. He finds that sculpture. He goes to the Reverend. He interviews the Reverend. The Reverend tells him this pretty wild story about working at, one of these Tuttle, I guess, what do they call it? Not a sanctuary, but a...
it's...
what is the fucking word?
It's like
you know what I'm saying? It's like a place where people study how to practice this particular denomination of the religion, and
it's like not a religious
I want to say
school.
sanctuary, but I can't. Anyway, regardless,
Like an
he's working
institution?
there.
Or they call it the
yeah.
Wellspring program or something like that.
Well, yeah, but he's working at like wherever like one of their headquarters is, and he ends up knocking over this book that has a folder full of pictures of naked children, and he goes to the morality officer. And
it's such a fucked up story. It's so but yeah, it gives you a sense of like why he's so troubled at this point in his life.
Yeah, man, he's seen some shit, and the morality officer's like, it's nothing for you to worry about, and then he ends up getting canned.
Well, it was interesting too because like instead of him like looking into the lead, like the morality officer is like almost trying to turn it back on him. He's like, "Oh, are you trying to confess to something like that you found?"
Yeah.
So he's like, he backs off because he's like, I don't want to get accused of that because that's not what's going on. And like you really feel for him because he's just like, because he says in the interview, he's like, "Why did you leave the church?" He's like, "Oh, it was just the bureaucracy of it all." And he's like, "Don't lie to me." And he's like, "Well, if you really want to know, I'll tell you what was going on."
Mm-hmm.
And
it really was bureaucracy in politics. And
you really feel for him too, because it's just like he was like doing those tent revival things, but you never get a sense like he's an evangelical dude, and he's like that fire and brimstone kind of preacher, but you never get the sense that he's like a bad guy, which is nice. Like it's not.
Yeah, you root for him.
He doesn't seem like one of those bureaucratic dudes. It's like trying to cover up underground sex stuff with children.
Yeah. No, he tells him that one of these Tuttle religious schools, that there were some rumors going around that they were diddling kiddos.
Yeah.
But so he gets some seriously valuable information from this guy.
Yeah.
And
like I want him to come back too. I think he's such a good character.
Me too. I don't know. I don't think he does.
Yeah.
But great performance if he doesn't.
Yeah.
But anyway, you get Rust. That leads him to and the whole time he's doing this and turning shit over, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, I guess there's a new major because this is like 7 years later.
Yeah, I did notice that.
They have a new
and I was
boss.
he was talking and I was like, I don't remember him having this like thick New York accent. Like I don't know where this came from.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was an intentional casting decision just because it was 7 years later and there's a new major, or if that guy kind of bowed out of the show at that point. But it's sort of a bummer. I like the old major more.
Yeah, I did too. But I think it's a nice touch though. It like really gives you the sense of like the passage of time. Like it's like oh no, it's just this new guy now. That's a lot more like no nonsense than the previous guy was.
Yeah, but so Rust is getting his ass chewed out constantly by this dude for opening up old wounds, and he goes to he ends up going to finds Tuttle at his headquarters, and at the time I think back in '95 Tuttle was like the governor of Louisiana,
or he was like the brother to the governor or something like that.
Yeah, he had high up position and had called in that task force pretty damn quick.
Yeah. And
when Dora's body was found.
And Russ kind of alludes to that at the end of it. It's like, it's like there's some fishy shit going on with this guy. And even that meeting when he goes to Tuttle is really he plays it pretty straight, like, because he knows if he fucks up here, like it could pretty much end his career basically. Yeah,
very tense conversation.
But it's played really, like I've said like a ton of times, like very natural, but like that's the more unsettling aspect of it, is the fact that it's not like this big like showy like meaning he's like, I got you, motherfucker. It's like very like, he's like, well, we'll help you in any way that we can. He's like, he's not even like concerned that he's there. He's like not even worried about his presence being there. And all these questions he's
untouchable.
asking. Yeah, and it's like that's like the really like great thing about that character is that he's not. He feels so untouchable that he's like, this is not even a real concern for him. Like he's so...
Yeah, and it's also not a concern for him that the clerical files that had all the names of all of the administrators of all of these private schools got a little damaged in the flood on one of the sub-basement levels.
Yeah, very conveniently. So. And like one of them had been burnt down or something like that too. Or something like that. Yeah.
Some shady shit going on.
Very conveniently as well.
Yeah, so huge red flags. It's almost like I want to stay on Rust and like get through his story in the middle of this before we hop over to Marty.
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
that's kind of where, I think that's sort of where their paths join because, no. So the next thing he does is he goes and he finds the little girl, right? Because it's 7 years later now. She's older. She's in this catatonic state.
Which was like a big piece of big piece of information that he needed.
Yeah, big piece of the puzzle. And he's just grasping at straws here. He's trying to find anything he possibly can. And he questions her if she remembers anybody else in the room, and she says, the big man with the scars. And then as soon as she starts thinking about his face, she completely freaks out.
Yeah.
And then Cole really gets a mouthful from the Major. And I feel like this is kind of where we could shift over to Marty if you want to take over to his whole spiel during this time period.
Yeah, his whole domestic life situation. Because it's kind of it's definitely rocky, obviously, because the way that the fourth episode ended up, he ended up getting caught with the old girl like coming forward to Maggie and telling her everything.
Right.
So and she kind of begrudgingly takes him back. Like, you don't get the sense that she's really like expecting a whole lot at this point, but for the sake of her kids, I think is like where her head's at least. And
yeah, and they mentioned this. I think it had a lot to do with, I think the timing of the shooting of the huge shootout with Rust like really helped Maggie sort of come to terms with it. I think that even though she knows that he's dealing with crazy shit at work, I think there is a part of it that the most important thing to her is her relationship with him and her kids. Yeah. And I think that shootout was a little bit of a reality check for her. Like, holy shit, he really is, dealing with some insane, dangerous stuff. And I think that the timing of that aided in her being willing to give him another chance.
Yeah. And I think also too, like, and this is a tiny thing, and I don't know if this would be intentional, but I think too, like, it would almost look worse on her if she ended up, going through with a divorce post that, like, because he's a hero, he's like really well renowned, like a couple years down the line, her kids start asking questions about her. It's like, did you leave dad? Like, he's a great man, like he did all these really great things. And left him like at the height of that when that happened. I mean,
she almost has no choice.
I feel like there's a bit of societal pressure, and there's also a sense that she does want to do the best for her kids in this situation. And I think she does make a genuine effort for a really long time to make it work. And then she's just gets spit in the face again pretty badly. With this is a rough one. It was a tough pill for me to swallow when I saw this with the girl in the T-Mobile store. He's just like going to get a new phone or something like that, and he ends up going to the bar next door for a drink, and the girl comes over and she's like, "Oh, I know you from somewhere. You're like that hero cop." And it gets revealed that when they were at the cat house early on in the show, the little girl that was there that he gave money to be like, go do something else. Like, this is a bad situation for you to be in. That's the same girl.
Yep.
And he ends up and he has a moment too, where he could be like, no, I'm the older person here. You're still young. Like, I saw you when you were like, this is a fucked up situation. Like, you obviously have feelings for me because you feel like I tried to save you, like in your moment of desperation. And he could just walk away from that, but knowing Marty, obviously he doesn't do that.
Well, and I don't know if you caught this, because I know you're very astute with this type of shit, but he was considering walking away, and there was one thing that she said that changed his mind. And it was shortly, well, actually, I don't know how recently he had been having a conversation with Maggie, and she said something about, I think it was when they were at the roller skating rink. She was like, it's not the infidelity, it's that you used to be a good person.
Right.
And that, I think, cut him really deep. And then you have this girl, and he's really not wanting to do it, and she says something along the lines of, you're a great guy. You're a truly great guy. Like, you're a hero. And that just...
He's like...
He needed that for his ego.
A sense of a clean slate. Like, being with somebody that thinks the world of him, which is, it's true. And he had... With the Maggie thing, like, he'd kind of made his bet on that kind of thing. So it's self-inflicted at the same time. But it is... Yeah,
it's self-inflicted. That's what sucks about infidelity in a marriage like that. It's like, once that trust is broken, there's no remedying that. Like, the issues compound. They become layered. Like, you just can't ever get away from it.
Yeah, and it's just a fuck situation, and then it ends up, rearing its ugly head at the end of the episode where, all that happened. I can't remember if there's anything.
That makes me want to bring up a point, right? So obviously Maggie busts him with the phone because she finds his clothes that he's washing in the dryer, and he never does his own fucking laundry.
Yeah.
So she notices the clothes. She checks his phone, immediately finds the pictures. I had a thought, okay, and maybe this is, maybe I'm overthinking it a little bit, but are we meant to assume that Marty is so self-absorbed and pig-headed to assume that he wouldn't, and I know that this new affair was sort of sudden, it wasn't planned, it's not like he's doing this thing all the time,
right?
But it's like, dude, if you were gonna do it and then do it again, which he does when she calls him back asking to do it in the butt or whatever,
which is like, that's
hey,
the racier elements.
It's HBO. They need it for the ratings.
Which, when I saw that girl, sorry, this is off topic, but I was like, was that Julia Stiles from 10 Things I Hate About You? It's like, no, it's not. It's just some other girl.
No, definitely not. Yeah, just a lookalike.
Yeah, but
anyway, no. So my point is, right? So it's a repeat offense. Why you're a police officer? Like, why would you not have a second phone? I'm not trying to aid Marty in his infidelity or give him any sort of excuses. But, dude, like, Maggie's going to be suspicious of you forever, and you take no liberties to hide it whatsoever.
Yeah. No, I agree. And he's just like, even the thing with the clothes, but it wasn't even just the clothes. It was the kinds of clothes he was washing too. It was like, like a nice shirt and like some pants. Like, it wasn't like work stuff, it was like, oh, where were you going? Like, where you
it was
have
casual
like, this stuff
clothes
on. So it was like, that was dumb. And like, like you said, I mean, like, he just got all that stuff on his, and I think it's a part of like him that's just kind of dumb. Like, he's just not that bright of a guy.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, he just doesn't. I don't know. I feel it's part of me was like struggling with it. Okay, is it just a plot device to get through this quicker, or is he really that fucking dumb?
Yeah, and I think you needed to get to a point quickly because the show is really good at like the pacing of that kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't try to ruminate on those things for too long. I mean, like, early on, like, he had that relationship with that girl that kind of spanned a couple of episodes. But it was always like leading somewhere like more and more volatile. Like, he would go over there, and then like he would see her with another guy and like lose his shit and like beat the shit out of the guy. It's just like he can't keep it together. And it was just one of those things. He's just like, he's just messy. He's just sloppy, and that was a big thing with Maggie too. It's just like, like at a certain point, like he just stopped being that guy, like lost his sense of humor and like was just this this really ultra serious macho, like bro dude, and like out of nowhere. And like, I don't know where that happened.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
sad shit.
That's another thing too. Like I forgot to even mention, just not even that big of a thing, but like at the beginning of the episode, like he catches the two dudes that were with his daughter and they're in the jail cell, and he basically is just egging them on because he like kind of opens the jail cell for them. He's like, "Oh, come out here, I just want to talk to you." He just beats the fuck out of them.
Yeah, man.
Which is like, there's a weird element to that too, and there's definitely like a level of misogyny that he has throughout the show with all the relationships he has with women, because he either views them in like a sexual conquest kind of way, like with all these affairs that he has,
right,
and even with his wife, but Maggie has that other burden of like, okay, if you're not pleasing me in any way, like you've got to be a mother, you've got to wait on me hand and foot kind of thing. And it's not, he doesn't directly say those things, but it's always kind of implied. Like even in this episode where she's caught him, like she's seen the pictures, but she doesn't, lash out at him or raise her voice or anything. She just internalizes it. She knows what's going on, and she just sits at the other end of the couch just reading a magazine. And it's like a really like tense moment, and she's like giving him spaghetti and stuff, and like, just kind of giving him everything that he wants to keep him happy. And there's just that added element of him. He just doesn't, he like clearly, like even his daughter, he doesn't respect her agency as like a young woman. And that's, I mean, she's still 16, but he's not really setting her up for like a great future in relationships, like reacting that way and calling her a slut and like slapping her in the face. So there is an element to his character that is, very misogynistic, but in like a traditional, like
dumbass guy way.
Yeah, patriarchal kind of way, where it's like, I'm doing this for the good of the family, but it's like rooted in like something really fucked up and repressive.
Yeah, and you get that moment at the end of that when she's sitting on the couch and he puts on the game or whatever, and he's like, "I love you, babe," and she's like, "Thanks."
Yeah, and he doesn't even
think notice. Yeah, that just proves your point.
Yeah, like that. I think that's a good example. Yeah, he's like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess she does too. He doesn't even think about it. Doesn't really matter to him.
Yeah, and that's when shit hits the fan.
Yeah, which I've loved Maggie like all the way up into this, but I not the fact that she ended up having the affair. Like I completely get where that comes from. I was really upset that she kind of used Russ like that and then threw him under the bus immediately. I was really upset with her when she did that.
Yeah, and honestly, her reasoning for it when she comes over to Russ's apartment and basically, you can't say she raped him, like he did it, but it was. Yeah,
but she was definitely coercing him and like using him, and
right.
It kind of fucked him up. Like you could really see in his eyes that it was like, he was like on the verge of tears like afterwards. Like it was. Yeah,
like, as soon as he realized what she was doing, and the worst thing about it, right? It's like for her excuse, even immediately after she did it, is this is the only way I could really get him to leave, and. Yeah. I just don't buy that. Like, no. I feel like if she, I think she has the grounds with catching him. It's been long enough since all the heroic shit or whatever.
And she's got the evidence. She could compile that.
She's got the evidence. He's a repeat offender. She has all the grounds to kick him out for real this time. And he has he would have no choice but to be like, yeah, like, I get it. Like, you fool me once, I think even as dumb and misogynistic and patriarchal as Marty is, I think even he would realize at that point, yeah, I've fucked up beyond repair. Like, you didn't need to go to that length. I don't think it was necessary, but a very interesting plot device anyways.
Yeah, and I think it like speaks to their like unspoken like attraction to each other throughout the show. Like there is like a undercurrent of something has always been there, and like And I got that vibe like when she set him up in one of the previous episodes with a woman that looks just like her. And I think that was like probably more of a choice on the directorial like casting process part. You know, we're gonna like lay the seeds of like something here. But you know, they've always had that relationship where she can talk to him very honestly and openly, where Marty is never honest with her, seemingly throughout the show. Like he's always very like, you know, trying to be macho or like trying to be like, my life is so hard, like kind of thing. Like she can actually talk and relate to Rust, and then she just kind of throws that all away in this one moment of like, you know, because she goes to the bar and
vengeance. It's vengeance.
It's vengeance, yeah, for sure. Like pure and simple. She's using him to get back at Marty because she's really upset with him, and she's like at the bar and she runs into this other guy named Bruce, which I don't know why hearing the name Bruce made me laugh. But
of course his name is Bruce.
Of course his name is Bruce. And she's like obviously still wearing her wedding ring on her finger, like at the bar, which I thought was like an interesting touch. But she, even when she goes over to Rust's place, like she says, like, you know, there was a guy at the bar, but I just couldn't do it. You know, I just couldn't do it with a stranger. You know, it needed to be, and it wasn't. But she says that like, you know, I want that intimacy, but it was just a ploy to totally use him in that moment, which is why he kicks her out and is really, really angry with her. He realizes, for as like inquisitive as he is, he's still human and gave into that impulse in that moment. So yeah, and very messy, very like, you know, they did some, you know, more for Russ, because I don't even think he wanted to do it. Like I don't, as much as he like has his issues with Marty, I don't think he wanted to actually do that to him.
Yeah, and it was, you know, everything was kind of coming to a head anyway with Russ sort of losing all of his leeway as far as how much further he could push the investigation, and then this thing happens with Maggie, and you know, they have it out in this epic fight scene in front of the police station.
Yeah.
And beat the ever-living shit out of each other. And it's funny, too, I didn't notice this the first time. If you listen to all of the other detectives that are standing around, they're, like, egging them on. Like, come on, Marty, you're getting your ass kicked.
You're getting your ass kicked, Marty. Let him beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, it's like they're not even trying to break it up. It's like... Yeah. It's like they know that, like, they know what it's like, partner disputes or whatever, and... They probably just realized, like, these guys are only going to go at each other like this if this is the only way to solve whatever fucking bullshit they're dealing with.
Yeah, it's only broken up when the chief is like, hey, you fucking numbskulls, get the fuck back inside.
Yeah. But it's funny, it's almost like Russ needed that in a way, even though obviously he didn't plan for Maggie to come over and rape him. He wasn't going to get any further anyway. So this leads him to, as far as you learn from the interview, the detective supposedly like disappear for 7 years, but you find out he did not disappear.
Okay, what do you mean like he didn't disappear?
So this is a little detail that kind of gets when the detectives are interviewing Marty before Marty leaves. When it kind of goes back to present time, they reveal to Marty that Marty had assumed that after their fight, when Rust quits, that he had sort of gone off the grid and moved away or whatever. And what the detectives have revealed is that he never actually left town. He just kind of went into hiding and continued investigating the murders. And they mentioned something about a storage locker that he's sort of been living in, that he won't let them in to see what he's doing in there. So they have all these photos of him repeatedly visiting all of these crime scenes that are happening that seem like they relate to this original case. And they've got all these pictures of him at the scene and coming back 5 times. And so you find out, it's revealed that their whole reason for interviewing both of them is that they're basically trying to pin all of these murders on Rust. When they lay out their case for Marty, it's actually pretty convincing. And even Marty, I think, is questioning it or giving it some credence a little bit.
Because they had like photo evidence of him being at this particular, it was like a funeral or something like that. right?
Oh, it was at a crime scene, like where a body was found.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you just, you're like, okay, well, what the fuck has Russ been up to for 7 years? And we're going to find out more in the next episode.
Because I have a hunch right now what I think it is.
Okay. What's your hunch?
So my hunch is, he obviously has like a background in undercover work. And I think there was a part of him that's like, the only way that undercover really works if I really live this part and really kind of ingratiate myself in the culture and become like this recluse kind of guy. So my theory right now is that he went into undercover without any police, background or anything like that. He did it totally independently. Yeah, he did it totally by himself. And he was like, this is the only way that I could really do this. Like if I was fired or quit in disgrace and was just like, fuck the system, I'm going to live out. And I think he's continuing his work in an undercover capacity to try and uncover as much as he can without having to deal with the fucking police, which he feels like is probably just holding him back. All the bureaucracy of everything is like, you can't question this guy, you can't do that. He just doesn't have the authority that he has as a police officer, so it takes way longer.
Interesting theory. I like it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
I like it, but I'm not telling you anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's my loose framework for where it's going. Because the episode ends with Marty coming back from the interview in present day, and the car honking behind him, and it's Russ flagging him down and being like, hey, you want to get a beer with me? And they're pretty amicable. I mean, a lot of time has passed, obviously. But
yeah, they literally have not spoken since the fight 7 years ago.
Yeah. So, but, pretty cool with each other at the moment. So, was nice.
I like that and that sort of harps back on this is just proof of how great the writing is when you really pay attention. And like you talked about, that the fact that it was, Nick Pizzolatto spent 10 years writing this, you can tell in a lot of the ways that a lot of the themes and lines kind of hark back on each other. Like there's something either earlier in that episode or the previous one where when they're interviewing Maggie, who is, totally vouching for Rust's character and,
yeah. And
pretending that she knows nothing about the affair that she took part in.
Yeah, and Marty too. Like he actually vouches for Russ quite a bit. Even though he had that big blow up with him.
Yeah, and I think I think it was Maggie that says a line early in the episode where Rust had told her something, that forgiveness isn't a thing. People just have short memories. And I think that's sort of what you get wrapped up in a pretty bow at the end of this episode is, it's been 7 years. These guys probably haven't forgiven each other, really, but time heals all wounds.
Yeah, enough time has passed where it's not, like, I think Marty even's like, I get it. Like, there's a part of him that's like, like I was kind of a piece of shit at the time too, so definitely wasn't innocent in the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure by this point, he and Maggie had talked it out enough over the course of the divorce or breakup or whatever that, I'm sure she explained why she did what she did and how it happened and whatever.
Because all her problems with Marty, like even in the interview, she's not willing to condemn him in any way. Like she's very careful with her words and doesn't say anything that'll give him away or shady things that he had done. Like she plays it all pretty close to the vest, so that was good.
Yeah, but epic couple of episodes. Shit's really, we got 2 left, man.
Yeah, I know.
There's some crazy shit on the way.
I know. I've been fucking loving it, and these ones are. It's kind of like the first 4 episodes. They kind of reached their climax of the thing, and like with 5 and 6, it's almost kind of like we're going back to the beginning a bit. Like we're kind of building up and ramping up towards something, which is...
Well, and that's the thing. If there's any part of you that's worried that the finale of this show is not going to be satisfying or, is not going to hold up to the level that the rest of the show has, you need to let go of any of that because the next 2 episodes are fucking awesome.
Okay, good. I'm so excited. I'm just... Yeah, I've been... this is one of those things even after we finish it, I might just go back and rewatch it just so I can appreciate it without having to take notes or thinking about what I'm going to have to talk about. I just want to go back and rewatch it for just the enjoyment of doing it
Yeah, it's a kick-ass show, and I'm so grateful you're watching it with me, buddy. It's fun talking about it.
I love it.
Even though I don't really know what value we provide to our listeners by basically just talking about everything that happened, but it's fun to talk about, man.
Well, we got to orient ourselves and like talk about scenes, but it's good when we kind of just go off on tangents about stuff and like kind of riff on the ideas and themes that are presented. And
yeah, it helps you absorb the story and appreciate it more. And like that's worth it to me.
Yeah, because there are things that you said I didn't even think about. And like other little details that I might have picked up on, and just little. It's great to have somebody I can just like talk to. It's like a book club. You just feel like, what do you think about that chapter? And I was like, well, yeah, there's some crazy shit that happened.
Really, is that what this is, Sumner? Is that what this podcast is? Is this our book club?
This is our book club, yeah.
I think it's our book club, man.
Which I'm fine with.
Everybody needs a book club.
This is all I've ever wanted, is somebody I can bullshit about movies and TV shows with.
And put it on the internet.
I do that with everybody in my life. People are like, what do you think and feel? I'm like, watch this movie. You'll know what I think and feel.
And you'll understand. Yeah, you communicate through film.
I do. It's a problem. I don't think I have a genuine personality. It's just all filtered.
It is
through.
a very valuable problem for us to have trying to do this podcast.
For content, dude?
For content, this has been a very special another episode of One Guy's Seen It. True Detective season, True Detective edition.
I haven't seen the last 2 episodes, but so far it's a masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece, man. Next week we will finish this bad boy and get drunk and talk about it.
I'm so excited. I feel like I'll need a couple of beers for sure to talk.
Speaking of which, do you want to rate these 2 episodes, or do I already know what the rating's going to be?
I didn't have a beer the whole time. I was very just enjoying the whole thing. So I would
proof 0 beer score for this one. I'm in agreement.
Yeah. It always helps. It always makes it so much more fun. But yeah, you could watch this stone cold sober and you'd still have a great time.
Hell yeah, my friend. We will be back next week. And my name is Jeff. And,
my name is Sumner.
And remember,
every movie's better with 0 beers. Alcohol is a sin.
0 beers, motherfuckers.
Oh, wait. Oh, my God.
What's up? Holy
we didn't
fuck,
talk about my favorite part of this whole episode. Oh, my God. We skipped right over it. Okay. So, I can't believe I almost did that. That would have sucked.
It would have sucked.
So, there's that interview that Rust has with that woman in the middle of the episode, or I think her name is Charmaine.
Oh, the baby killer.
The baby killer, the Casey Anthony lady.
Uh-huh.
And this whole thing about, and I can't remember how it relates to the overall plot, but it almost doesn't even matter, because it was just he's like getting a confession out of her. He's like doing what he does best in that moment, and he basically knows that she killed her child because it had like a sleep apnea machine. And it was unplugged for like 30 minutes, and then when she plugged it back in, like the kid was obviously dead. But Russ has one of my favorite lines of the whole show, which it was knowing Rust, it's like it makes sense, but like it was shocking when I heard it. I was like, oh fuck, that was amazing. And he's like, prison is hard on people that hurt kids. If you see an opportunity, you should probably kill yourself. And it just walks out of the room.
Dude, it's so fucking hardcore. And what's funny is like I thought about it for a moment, and I was like, okay, he's just taking out his frustration with the world on this woman that he's just busted. But then you think about it a little more, and you're like, no, he might honestly just be in some weird roundabout Rust way trying to do her kindness, because he's right. Like, your best way out here is your best way out here is just to end shit, because it's not going to get any better for you.
Your existence is going to be just misery forever and ever.
Yeah.
If somebody
and time is a flat circle, so it will always be.
Yeah, if somebody doesn't end it for you, you should probably just do it yourself. It was so dark, but it was one of the darkest things I think I've ever laughed at, but it was so funny.
You laughed at it, you sick fuck.
Yeah, I was just like, but it's like, remember when the Casey Anthony thing happened? It was just like, that was like the story of the century. And like, it's like in that moment when he says that, I was like, that's what everybody in America wanted to say to that woman. Like when that thing happened, it was just,
pretty much. We have no room in our hearts for baby killers.
Yeah, some people just need to die. Some people are better off dead. So.
Well, yeah, and it's fucked up too because he was basically saying they had no way of busting her on the previous two kids that she'd clearly done the same thing to.
Yeah.
And I don't, it's funny, he brought up Munchausen by proxy, which I've learned a lot about in the last year just from other things.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't get that reference at all. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Okay, so Munchausen by proxy is, it's something you know about even if you didn't know what it was legally referred to, but it's basically when a parent projects illness or conditions onto their child in order to get attention or money.
Okay.
And it's something that I think really was only relatively recently kind of identified as like a psychological syndrome that people have, but it was really popularized by that the story of the girl who actually just got released from prison, that Hulu show The Act with what's her face?
I
love her so much.
Joey King?
Yeah, well, no, Joey King, Patricia Arquette plays her mom.
Yeah, as the mom, yeah.
Yeah. So that's like the most famous case of Munchausen by proxy ever, where, she has this little girl that she basically convinces all of these doctors and all the girl's family and even the girl herself that she has, 3 different types of cancer and all these fucking things. And she never had any of it. It was all just so that the mother could get attention. And it's a really fucked up psychological thing that I'm surprised has like happened enough times to even like become classified as like a medical condition.
Yeah.
But and it's funny that you bring it up because I was just watching something else that was another Netflix documentary called What Happened to Amy or Annie or something. But anyway, it's a new documentary about this girl who she had a really rare disease. I forget what it's called, but basically it's like it typically happens to young girls when they reach anywhere from like 7 to 10 years of age, where she just starts getting really intense bone and joint and muscle pain all over her body to the point where like she can't move, she can't do anything, and her legs start to bow, and it's just excruciating pain, right? And it's a relatively new disease or condition, and at this time, I think in the mid 2000s, her mother was a nurse and very knowledgeable, but a very sort of upfront, pushy woman when it came to her daughter. And basically, they took her daughter to like 8 different doctors, and none of them could figure out what was wrong with her. And she finds out about this doctor who specializes in just this disease because it's brand new, and he's kind of dedicated his life to getting as much scientific documentation about it as possible and getting people to learn about it. I wonder if Andy knows about it. I should ask her if I can remember what it's called. But anyway, they find out that there's this particular place in Mexico. What this doctor has learned from years of trying to treat this is that the only thing that really treats it is like super heavy doses of ketamine, like regular doses of ketamine. And the problem with that in the US is obviously ketamine is like a Schedule II narcotic or whatever. It's a very heavy opioid, and you're not supposed to give that to children. And what this guy has learned is that the only way to treat this disease long term that has worked is to put the child into what's called a ketamine coma, which is where you literally give them so much ketamine that they go into a coma, I think for at least a week, and then you wake them up and you wean them back off the ketamine, and it sort of solves it. Whatever it is, it just like it triggers the right things in the brain. Who knows, right? So they go to Mexico, they do this procedure. Everything goes great. She comes back to the U.S. She's pretty much good for like 2 or 3 years. And then this hurricane happens. And during the hurricane, I think she has all this psychological stress, and she ends up relapsing and getting this pain back. And her dad sort of panics, and the doctor that they usually take her to get her ketamine doses is like out of town. So he takes her to the emergency room, and the doctors are like they can't figure out what's wrong with her. Because again, this is a new disease, and so her parents explain like what the disease is and how much ketamine she's been getting on a regular basis, and the doctors freak out when they find out how much ketamine. They're like, holy shit. And so Child Protective Services gets involved, which I found out is something that happens a lot all over the country. Is like parents will bring their children in with unknown medical conditions, or at least relatively unknown medical conditions. And if the doctors don't know what it is, and they typically what they'll do is they'll call Child Protective Services, CPS will send a rep, and that rep is basically God. They can take that child away from their family with little to no information and make it basically impossible for the family to get their kid back. So, you know, they bring in this CPS agent. She looks at the amount of ketamine that they're giving her and basically takes their 13-year-old daughter away from them. Mm-hmm. And it turns into this fucking crazy, like, year-long fiasco where this girl's basically kept prisoner in this hospital. And all of her pain comes back, and her mom is so distraught over it that her mom ends up killing herself. It's a really fucked up story.
God. Yeah. Jesus.
But what the CPS and doctors said that it was Munchausen by proxy. Like, because her mom was so pushy about the ketamine, they were convinced that her mother was like giving her this disease. And I think that the negative impact that the story about that girl Rose whatever from the act, the negative impact that it's had is that now it's in like the collective subconscious of medical professionals all over the country and all over the world, and they're jumping to conclusions about Munchausen by proxy, and it's such a like nuanced thing to really bust somebody on. Like, you need you know, because like medicine, medicine's come so far in the last 20 years. We know about so much shit that we never knew about. And it's like, how can doctors be so quick to be like, no, like that can't possibly be something we've never heard of. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, like,
really sad, long story, but
there's still things that people don't even know what they are. I mean, undiscovered diseases and things like that.
Yeah, and with all the fucking microplastics we're ingesting on a daily basis, who fucking knows?
We get cell
who
phones.
Fucking knows what kind of weird vapes? You know, it's all. We're all gonna die. But
cell
my
phones
point
in
is,
our pockets
I didn't understand. Yeah, exactly. I didn't really understand how Munchausen by proxy applied to her particular situation, unless he was basically saying that like her whole deal was she liked the attention she got from having a baby and then that baby dying. And all of the like outpouring of support that she would get from the community. I guess that's kind of what he was referring to.
Yeah, because even Marty in that scene, like she's like going off and about something, and like just talking about all the kids that she had. And he's like, "You never heard of a condom?"
Yeah, he just basically completely blows the interview.
Yeah, which is like another like a, you know, like fucked up misogynistic thing to say, but
such a Marty thing to do. But
even she's like, you know, like birth control is a sin, which is like, you know, like he's rooted in the like Christian lifestyle, and he's like, all babies are beautiful, like gift from God or whatever.
Yeah. Fucking birth control is a sin, but murdering your infant isn't, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the abortion doesn't happen. If the abortion happens like in the first 5 years of life, you know, it doesn't count. I don't know. Like some crazy backwards thinking.
Speaking of backwards thinking, not to get in the weeds. Yeah, if anybody's listening to this podcast, they can totally tune off. You know, we're done talking about True Detective, but God, man, I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures that are going viral all over the place right now. You know, obviously we're stuck with Trump and Biden again. Everybody's officially pulled out, which we all knew was going to happen. But there's all these pictures that are going around of Trump. They're like Trump deep fakes with like communities of people of color. Have you seen any of these?
No, I haven't.
It's unbelievable. Like, you got all these massive... It's like as if the misinformation on Republican Facebook wasn't bad enough. Mm-hmm. Like... Oh, yeah. And I don't really particularly lean one way or the other, but I can't stand the shit that I'm seeing. Like, it's really well done AI deep fakes of Trump, like in like low-income neighborhoods surrounded by people of color, like smiling and cheering.
Oh,
and
my
like,
God.
And it's like, if you really look close at the photos, you can see hands get weird and whatever. But what's happening is that all these massive, you know, crazy right-wing Facebook pages are sharing these, and they're getting thousands of shares and people commenting saying, see, look, Trump loves the people. And it's like, dude, this is the beginning of the end. Like, this is the shit that everybody was saying would happen when OpenAI launched their shit. But like, we're seeing the beginning stages of it, and it's fucking terrifying.
Well, it's gonna be like it's a rough next 20 to 30 years of the political cycle when all the older people that don't understand these things start dying off, and like younger people come in and like that actually understand, like, hey, this is, you know, like people that are smart enough to recognize, you know, all the misinformation they're getting. And I mean, like, that's not even to like that comes off like, you know, like kind of ageist, like, you know, people that couldn't make that leap. I'm not trying to say that, but
no, I get you.
You know, it's just like it's so far gone from whatever it was, like even back in the 90s, like, nobody could have ever predicted what it's going to be like now. And just most people are not equipped to think about things like that nuanced, I guess.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I mean, I don't.
I mean, even people
like,
our age too. I mean, like I don't even.
Yeah, no, for sure. There are plenty of people I know that would not be able to tell the difference or care. But like, like I said, I'm not leaning one way or the other because there's some shady shit going on both sides. Like I read this whole fucking thing about the way that Google's the last election. So this is what I think a lot of people don't realize, right? And this is not being ageist either, right? But people that don't understand how big tech companies work and the websites that the average American or the average person has sort of grown to think of as a utility, right? Like as something like air or water or power or whatever, which in my mind is Facebook, YouTube, and Google, right? Are the three big ones that anybody that gets on the internet is going to get on one of those sites at least once when they're on the internet. And I think that the vast majority of people over a certain age, and even people our age, don't realize that these are privately owned companies that can do whatever the fuck they want. The First Amendment says they can do whatever they want. They can control information however they want to control it. It's their prerogative. It's their company. Sure, it's publicly traded, but they can do whatever the fuck they want. So there's all of this data that's come out recently that Google has. Google every election does these like election alerts. Like if you're signed into Google to your Gmail or whatever, when you're on Google, it'll send you a reminder like go vote. Well, this crazy like web crawler did a statistics thing and showed that something like 90% of people who'd shown some kind of political affinity throughout their Googling or in whatever they were doing, like 90% of people that aligned with the left got notifications to go vote, and only 59% of people that aligned right got those notifications. Wow. So that's a really shitty thing for Google to do. Is only tell, because that's a huge impact. Like people forget to go vote. If you get on Google on your phone and you get a big banner across it, don't forget to vote today. Like and most of that's only going to people that Google has data on that typically vote left. Like that's where you get that shit is happening on miniature scales like that from all these big tech companies, and it's that's not any better than deep fakes of Trump. It's not any better. Yeah. Like, it's fucked up all the way around.
Yeah, and I think the media has a way of, like, compartmentalizing it. It's like, look at all the crazy shit this side is doing. And it's like, what about the other side? It's like, well, don't worry about that. They have their reasons. Like, right or left, in terms of media, they have a way of
each side will say the other side doesn't play fair, so why should we?
Yeah, which is why I'm so glad that Jon Stewart is back on doing the Daily Show.
Yeah, dude, I haven't watched any of it.
It's fucking great. Like, he's just so... Because he's like, he had that, like, the problem with Jon Stewart on Apple TV Plus, like his... Which was more like a political discourse show than it was like a comedic show. But, like, him going back to the roots of, like, the comedic aspects of political satire, like, that first episode was just... that he did was so great at, like, tearing down both sides, like, all the problems that are going on with, like, the political discourse in the country. Like, he's just fucking master. I love Jon Stewart so much because it's just, like, such a necessary voice. It was just, like, sorely missed that he was, like, actually an intelligent, thinking, like, just American citizen that is just thinking about the political cycle. Like, it's great.
Yeah, with no real bias, regardless of how he feels personally.
And I mean, like, he obviously slants left and, like, he has got that liberal bias, but I mean, he's pretty forthcoming about it and he doesn't try to hide it. And he's, forthcoming enough to where it's like, he leans left and he's going to lean towards these ideas, but it's through his own personal viewpoints about the political system and not trying to, like, manipulate you to think that way. He's just trying to convince you, like, in a logical kind of way. And I don't know, it's great.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, highly recommend. It's on Paramount Plus. I'm doing a plug for the Daily Show right now, but
plug away, my friend. Well, yeah, we should definitely wrap this shit up.
Yeah.
I feel bad for anybody that's listened this far, but now you know what Munchausen's by proxy is.
Yeah. Which I was like, that sounds like something famous, but I had no idea what it was. But thank you for that little bit of knowledge.
You are welcome, my friend. Let's wrap it up. We'll see you guys next week on One Guy's Seen It. Stick around. Shit's about to get wacky.
Yeah, we'll finish the whole series.
Hell yeah. All right. Peace and love. Peace and love out there.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. One guy's seen it, the other guy hasn't. First guy's gonna tell the second guy all about it while they both get drunk.